Okay, I'm here with Jeremy, and we're going to talk about the subject of finite and infinite games as it relates to RecOps and maybe linked to recruiter enablement. And one of the reasons I like doing this with Jeremy is because every time that he and I talk, I think back to like 5 minutes before when I wish I'd pressed record and we'd put that conversation out as something for other people to hear because I just really love talking with you, Jeremy. So, yeah, give us a quick intro to you.
Sure. Well, and the feeling is definitely mutual. So, a quick intro to me, Jeremy Lyons. I am the co-founder and chief recruiting operations consultant for RecOps Collective, which is a recruiting operations professional services company. We help companies with their recruiting operations, uh, doing system implementations, identifying other groups that they can work with, and then we also publish a newsletter called the RecOps Collective that is about helping our community and delivering RecOps content to RecOps people. And of course, as part of being in RecOps, you're touching the systems, you're touching the data, which means you are very close to the recruiting enablement side of the fence.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I love about your newsletter, by the way, is you obviously consume a lot of RecOps related content because you're aggregating it, and if somebody wants to know about RecOps, they only need to subscribe to the newsletter, and they've got like not just what you've put together, but all the stuff you've chosen not to put in because you must think it's not that useful.
Well, I would say it's not so much that I don't think the other information isn't useful, and I think that comes from the fact that in recruiting operations you have to borrow from so many other places information in order to get your job done. I think where I draw the line, and I'm very particular about this, is to say I was reading this article, which may not have been about recruiting operations, and thought of recruiting operations for this reason, as opposed to doing what a lot of other people do, which is calling something recruiting operations and not really explaining it. And then when I go and I read that, I look at different things and I say, okay, does this fit under one of the five pillars of recruiting operations, which are operations itself, which could be the coordination side, change management, process improvement, programs and initiatives, data and analytics. Sometimes it's employer enablement or employer branding and strategy. And I try to sit there and sift through what where does this thing go, and if I can't find it or it looks like it's a little bit too much into another place, I don't include it, or I'll include it and say like, no, this is not recruiting operations, but it will have an impact on our space if you come in and you learn. And I think that comes from a growth mindset that
Yes.
continues. And I think that that's a lot of recruiting operations. If you get into sort of it's both a thought school and a physical thing you do, a lot of recruiting operations, you need to have all those ideas so that you can solve problems that you're going to run into now or in the future very novelly with that information. And you kind of never know when you're going to need to know the thing that you need to know. It's just sort of have it in your tool belt.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna ask you, like, give us an outline of what's finite games and infinite games all about, and then I'll connect it back to what we've just been talking about in terms of the newsletter and the subject of RecOps.
Yeah, so finite and infinite games. For those of you who like game theory, uh, it is a concept in game theory. There have been a couple of books about it. I posted about it in my newsletter, I think maybe 2 weeks ago. And basically, the idea is in a finite game, there is a specific winner, there's a specific loser, there are clear rules, there are basically clear combatants. You know what's going to play, and to kind of make it even simpler, less esoteric, most sporting events are finite games. You know it will be timed. You know that there will be a winner at the outcome. That's what it is. An infinite game is very different from a finite game in that players change, the rules can change, and where it kind of comes into play is that if you have an imbalance between recruiting or not recruiting, if you have an imbalance between people who are playing an infinite game, which is to say we're playing the game to play the game, and we will play as long until we kind of get tired and go home. Uh, versus people who have a finite mindset, you get kind of this competitiveness with the finite people who say we're gonna beat them, we're gonna beat them, and the people who are playing the infinite game kind of go, we don't really care. Yeah, you're our competition for the moment, but we've been here for a while, and we're gonna keep going.
I think it links very closely to the concept of growth mindset. Like, everything that I certainly look back at, like, I started my career in 1999 as a recruitment consultant in an agency, and everything I've done since then has been building, building, building on top of that, initial kind of base. And I think I'm getting better. I think I'm getting better at the game as it goes on, just because I've got more experience and I've failed a lot of times, and all that sort of. So, would you agree about that connection?
Oh, absolutely. I think that one of the things that the playing infinite games or having an infinite mindset and having a growth mindset are very similar, because you're building on the knowledge, and you know that it's not a true outcome. You're sort of, you like the space, the space, you want to be a student of the space and a historian of the space, and you probably now look at certain things that other people are screaming at you. Oh, well, it's a duck, it's a duck, it's a duck, and you're going, okay, I've seen this before, I've known what this is before. It's not a duck, it's a chicken. Like, you don't have that same sort of energy. Maybe it's not energy, but you don't have that same sort of drive to kind of go and chase all the shiny objects. You sort of know what works and what won't in a certain place, and then you keep your mindset open to having a newer generation or other people kind of come in and say, hey, have you thought about this, like this, and have that conversation grow on it. So I agree with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Okay. I did an interview a couple of days ago with the recruiter enablement team at Sage, the software company, and I asked them, is this does your company see this as like a 2-year project or a 3-year project or something like that? Or does it never end? And they said, no, it definitely never ends. There is so many things. And as the world changes, candidates change, technology changes, hiring managers change, everybody's expectations of what recruitment should be is different. I mean, it's natural that it's never going to end. So I'm talking about like what we all do in recruiting and also your RecOps newsletter. Like, there's never going to be a shortage of things to talk about, of new things.
No, and I agree with you, and I agree with their sentiment too, because I think one of the things, I think a lot of maybe hiring managers, I think the old idea that recruiting was there as there's a role, go fill the role. It's very task oriented. Kind of had everything sort of as this finite game. The role will be open until we fill it. There will be
Yeah.
a clear winner in terms of the candidate we select, and we're just going to keep going. And like, once you're done, you're done, and then you're on to the next thing. And I think what we've all realized in recruiting has been that it is an infinite game. When you're on an in-house team, or you're on it, or you're at an agency, you're trying to build relationships that keep going, because you can offer so much more, because it's not like you just learned this one industry for this role and now you can never use that information again. I think back to very early on in my career. I've worked for 2 content delivery networks, and I still will talk to people about how the internet works, because people will just say, oh, well, my loading up Instagram was slow today. And I go, well, that's not necessarily Meta's fault. That could be whoever's delivering the traffic to you,
Yeah.
traffic to you's issue. And it's the same thing with learning. It's ever growing, ever evolving. What poetry is going to teach somebody today, it might be very different in a year, when maybe there is a new generative AI product that comes out that people need to know everything about, or maybe there are going to be new processes, new things we're going to have to design, because we've all determined that, you know, not everybody is interviewing in the same kind of way, and we need to teach a new style of interviewing, but it doesn't necessarily mean the old style has to go completely out with the bathwater. It can stay. So it's just figuring those things out, I think, really lends itself to sort of an infinite mindset, an infinite growth mindset. Um, so enablement is not something that you just sort of, oh, we have to do discrimination training, we just have to do sexual harassment training, we're going to do it and get it done. It's something that is ongoing, and there's data to back that up, that you can't just sort of do bias training one time and then expect people not to fall back into their biases.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Jeremy, it's been thought-provoking stuff. Great to talk about the concept of an infinite mindset and linking that into like what we all need to be doing in RecOps and in recruiter enablement. And good to see you. Look forward to catching up again soon.
Definitely.